Hi everyone and welcome back to Chess for Charity. In this video, I'm going to show you a really cool puzzle where black has 8 pawns and a queen and you have a rook and a king, and your goal is to see if you can survive this position. So currently all of black's pawns, as the arrows show, are going down the board, and your job is to figure out how you can possibly draw this game, if you can draw it, maybe even try to win it. See if you can figure it out. A lot of fun here. It's a tough one, but give it a try. And while you're thinking about it, let me just encourage you to subscribe if you have not already. Half of the income that I earn in this channel goes directly to charity, so every like, every subscriber, all that stuff helps me out a lot. Okay, let's get started here. So it's white to move, and you have to figure out, what am I even trying to do here? What's the goal? A simple move like rook takes pawn doesn't make any sense because that's not going to get me any closer to attacking the king. That's just going to lead to them letting their queen out and pushing pawns. So you have to start thinking about your goal and how you can possibly achieve it. So let's just say you start checking as a first thought. This may seem like a good idea to you because you might think I can just check and check and check, but it's not really working out because after something like king h7 and you keep checking, this black king can eventually run up the board. And now you don't have a good check. So maybe you want to go back something like here, maybe threatening this check. That's not a problem. That's not mate. I can play e2 and I'm threatening now to check, to promote with check. So something like this, I step away. Something like this, now I'm attacking this one and I'm threatening this one. You're not going to be able to stop it, right? So basically the idea there is you cannot just check like a mad rook because eventually the king will run away from those checks. So the first move, it might be obvious to you, but I want to make sure I go to all levels here. The first move is king f6. The idea is I'm stepping here, I'm trying to limit the space of the king. I'm trying to box the king in. Now why do I want to do that, you might wonder? Well, I'm trying to box them in so I can check them perpetually. I want to check them so they cannot escape the checks. So in this position, if you're the black pieces, you have to be really careful. And I think if you didn't see this part, think about it. What would you play in this position as the black pieces? What move would you make here? You have to be really, really careful because there are a lot of ways that you can lose this game as black, despite being up 12 points of material. So if you move any of these pawns, the A pawn, the B pawn, C pawn, E pawn, F pawn, G pawn, H pawn, all of those pawns will lead to an immediate loss. And just to show that, let's say I move the B pawn or the C pawn. Let's say the C pawn. Maybe your idea is to get the queen here, something like that. Maybe that was your idea. Well, if you do that, white has this nice, very simple move. It's a mate in 2 from here. King G6. How are you stopping rook d8 mate? You're not. I play this move with the idea of trying to get over here. It's not covering my threat. My threat is here. That's going to be checkmate. That hurts. And the same idea applies to any other pawn move. So these pawn moves, it's the same exact thing. And clearly if you move the queen, it's the same idea. If I move the queen to the diagonal, or if I move the queen here, it doesn't matter. I play king G6 and I'm mating you in the next move. There's nothing you can do to stop it, right? So what is the only way to save this game? I shouldn't say save it, to defend against this threat of G6 and then the rook up and mate. The only way to save it is pawn D2. And you might go, okay, how does that save it? What's the difference here? Well, remember, I have to move this king first and then give check with the rook. So if I move king G6, this is actually a blunder for white. And why is that? Well, now I'm promoting the pawn and I'm covering that square in the back. So you can't mate me here because I would just take this, right? So in this position after D2, I'm not going to win as the white pieces. Every other move, I was winning. This is actually going to be a draw from here. And here's why. Rook d8 check. The king has to go to h7. Great. Okay, rook d7 check, right? what do I do? Just keep checking the pawn, or keep checking the king, the pawn. Okay, king goes here. Now here's a nice pop quiz for you, and this is where it gets crazy. It's been crazy already. Where do you go as the rook? You might think, okay, what's the point? What am I asking here? Where do you go to continue checking? Clearly a check like this is bad, so I'm not talking about that. I mean, where do you go in terms of your next check? Do you play rook d8 with the intention of playing rook h8, or do you play rook d4 with the intention of playing rook h4? Think about that for a second. Give it a moment's thought. So take note of the fact that if you play rook d8, you're actually going to lose this game. And you might go, what? Why is that? Well, look at this queen. This queen has a new diagonal that they can make use of, which means they can play queen b1, and your threat of checking is no longer that powerful. I can stop, and now my queen is on the other side of these pawns, which means this is going to be an easy win for black. If you take it, that's fine. I have 8 pawns, so there's not going to be a problem there. And if you don't take it, I don't know, what do? You go somewhere else? It doesn't really, you just sack it if you want. You have 8 pawns. So incredibly, rook d8 is a massive mistake. Instead, the only move in this position that wins, that draws rather, rook d4. The idea is checkmate. So if you get a little crazy and you say, oh, I'll just promote. Okay, well, you lose then. Ouch. That hurts. So you're threatening, as the white piece is, to play rook to h4 checkmate. So what do you do as black? Well, you have to either move the king to h7 or h5. Right? The idea behind h5 is you're stopping this check. And the idea behind h7 is you're going to run away if they do check you. Right? 2 different ideas, but they're very similar looking moves. Okay, in either case, it's going to be a draw at this point. Check, and if you ever try to run up this direction, you're not going to get too far because I can always check you again, and you'll be forced right back where you came from. And if you ever go back here, same idea. I don't play rook d8. That will lose. I go back to rook d4. If the king runs, that's fine. Just keep checking. Where do you check from? Do you check from d7 or do you check from h4? Well, I was saying that if you checked on h4, they run away, right? Here. Well, that's the idea. If you play rook h4, this is no longer very good for white because after king g8, now what? Look at this. They play this move. What do I play? Rook h4? Right, maybe one of these moves, threaten checkmate. It's kind of incredible. If I play here, what do? King e8, and now they're starting to run away. And this pawn is still looking very scary. This will be a win for black. So in this position, after they play this move, what do you have to do? You have to go back, rook d7. Right? Just stay on this d file and just keep going. So there, just go right back. And this will be a draw. So incredibly, despite the fact that you have only a few points of material here, you have a rook and a king, and they have 8 pawns, all of these pawns, and a queen, you can still draw this game. After king f6, depending on what they do, it's going to be a draw. If they move the king now, it's the same exact idea, just now they can make use, you can make use of d8 because there's no longer this diagonal. But yeah, that's pretty amazing. I don't know if you saw that. I thought it was an amazing puzzle. It's just so fancy the way that you can do all these things at the same time. And this move, it's just so cool. Check, check, and then this pop quiz here, I find it to be so instructive. Here or here, you can't go to d8, but you can go to d4. So that's it for the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments, did you get it right? Were you able to find the draw? I know it's a wild looking position, but let me know. But that's it for now. Thank you so much. Bye.